So I've been podcasting with my friends for about a year now, and I've been on their show occasionally talking about favorite albums. And there's one album that I would love to talk about today with you guys. It is my very first album that I ever got into in my entire life. We're going all the way back to 1998, when I was 5 or 6 years old. So I think a lot of people were listening to Backstreet Boys, the Spice Girls, NSYNC at that time. And you know what band I was listening to nonstop? Aqua. Yeah, you know Aqua, the Barbie Girl song. Well, I'm going to go a little bit more into that. So that album that Barbie Girl was on, Aqua's Aquarium, I should say, their very first album, released in 1997. It is my very first album that I ever got into as a kid, and I kind of want to go into that, just my history with it. But before that, let's give a little bit of an introduction on who Aqua is. So Aqua was a Danish dance pop band from the 1990s. And boy, does it show in their style and just their appeal, if you even watch their music videos that are a little hard to watch. And I don't mean like they're kind of cringy. Well, okay, they are kind of cringy. But with the exception of Barbie Girl, they're all the other ones aren't on YouTube, which I'm kind of surprised about. But yeah, they're a Danish band. Actually, in the early 90s, the four members, Lena, Renee, Soren, and Klaus, they all got together and they formed a band called Joy Speed. And I hadn't really heard what their earlier stuff was like. I don't even know. I can't even make a frame of reference on what it would be. But apparently, to their own admission, it wasn't working out for them. Like, their sound wasn't really like cranking up the charts or really getting any sort of attention, so they signed a deal with Universal Records and completely changed their image. And you know, in hindsight, it really looks like they were just sort of manufactured. Like, it really does show like they're trying to appeal to a younger demographic in the late 90s, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just sort of strange to me, like when you look at the personnel of the group. Like, you have Lena, who's like the main female singer. You have Renee, who's like the rapping kind of, you know, backup vocal in the band. And then what fascinates me about both Soren and Klaus is that they're both the producers. They're both the people that are in charge of the arrangements, so the songwriters. They do the keyboards, the drums, the guitars, and for some reason they just seem like they don't even need to be in the band. It's hard for me to say that, but like it's like two singers and like two guys that are kind of just there playing an instrument. And when you see them live, they just sort of stand out as guys who are just there. It's like, why not just play the music back? You know, because everything else, when you hear the actual like finished product, it feels so manufactured, I guess is a good word, but it feels very like it's all made in a computer. Like, it's all sounding so clean and so manipulated, and just like, if I was them, I would just feel so bad. So I mean, whatever makes them happy, whatever. But yeah, their album Aquarium, it got like 14 million copies sold worldwide. Like, it was a big phenomenon. Like, there's not just Barbie Girl on this album. Like, there's Dr. Jones. There's another one, My Oh My. Roses Are Red is a really, really good tune. It was actually one of their first singles that they released, one of their first videos. And okay, how about I get into a little bit more of my history into Aqua, and it's actually way more than just listening to this album. So I remember when I got into them just by like watching TV spots on YTV of just like little snippets of the music videos, and like even flipping through the channels, like landing on Much Music, there was just, the Lollipop music video, the Dr. Jones music video. It's just, and of course, Barbie Girl. I mean, that was like the one song that everybody was quoting. Like, you want to go for a ride? I'm a Barbie girl. Yeah. Like, it was everywhere. Everybody was talking about it. And then eventually my mom just got it for me on cassette. Oh yeah, a cassette is basically a way that people played music back then. It's pre-CD. Sorry, I'm talking to all the younger audience right now. Anyways, and yeah, I'll never forget opening up that cassette and just seeing like the giant octopus like grabbing all the band members by its tentacles, and like they're all riding on seahorses, and it was so like colorful and blue and just so cheesy looking. And damn, did these songs click so much to me as a kid. And looking at my roots of my taste in music, I'm not even ashamed to say this, I honestly think Aqua might be like the birth of my love for synthesized music or sampling, because there's a little bit of sampling in these songs. Like there's like the opening track of My Oh My with the horse. There's just there's a little bit more effort put into these songs than people would give them credit for. And I just can't believe that I think that all this started because of this album. So then, when I was really into them, it had to have been like the summer of '98. Like it took like a good year for this album to really not go away because it was everywhere. And I remember in the summer of '98, I was on a family trip in Cape Breton, and I was visiting a lot of family members out there. And I remember going to a Walmart in Port Hawkesbury with, I think it was my Nana that took me. And I'm in the movie section, and all of a sudden I see a copy of this thing called The Aqua Diary on VHS. And it was the only copy there in the store. It was just like sitting there in front of some other movies. Like there were no other copies for as far as I can see. I'm like, what the hell is this doing here? This is weird. And I was like, what's the Aqua Diary? And I'm looking on the back, and it's apparently just like a documentary about the band. And I was like, oh my God, just please buy me this right away. And they did. Of course, they knew I was into it. I was literally playing that album throughout the entire car ride going to Nova Scotia. And I remember a family friend of mine, like anytime we were driving, like as we were driving together, and anytime we were passing by a McDonald's, I think at the time, the Happy Meal toys were both a little Barbie doll and a Hot Wheel. And I would get the Hot Wheel, and she got the Barbie doll, and we reenact the opening like, hi, Bobby. Hi, Ken. You want to go for a ride? Sure, Ken. Like, oh, those were the good times. And wow, did I watch this tape, The Aqua Diary, a lot growing up, because it was so cool to actually see like the beginning. Like that's how I know all this. I didn't even have to look up like fun facts on the band just by internet. Like I knew that they went by Joy Speed in their early days. I knew that like where their backgrounds, where they came from. Like Renee was a DJ. Klaus was into, like, he was working as a gas station attendant when he met Soren, who Soren apparently was really deep into music. And Lena was also into music. And then eventually Lena and Soren were dating, and they got married, which is kind of sweet. They're still together to this day. I think Klaus dropped out of the band a little bit way later on, but yeah, what can you do? And it's funny with the Aqua Diary is that, you know, as it's going along of like their success rising, because overseas in Denmark they exploded, and then when they got the news that like way across the world in the United States, like Barbie Girl was just a big hit, Dr. Jones, Roses Are Red, all these songs were becoming so big that it shows like them globetrotting around the world for like a year and a half, going from concert to concert to autograph signing to autograph signing to an interview, just showing them goofing off behind the scenes. Like, it's not really the best filmed behind the scenes. I mean, there's a lot of kind of shoddy stuff, but I mean, what can you do, really? But the thing that fascinates me the most about this doc is that, I mean, it's like a 2 hour documentary, and it's intercutted between, like, like them making the music videos, and then it shows the music videos also, which was kind of fun. You get to see the progression of their tour pains, and it's very fascinating to see how upfront and honest they are. What I mean by tour pains is that you see them getting so exhausted, and like some of them are admitting that, like, oh, like, sometimes I wish I never made this album, or I'm so sick of this whole thing. Like, I mean, they're kind of like slap happy by the end of it, where they just miss having a normal life. This whole album just like completely took over their lives for like a year and a half. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. And like, they really didn't go off to do like anything else afterwards. Well, I mean, they did come out with like a follow-up album, but it didn't hit as strong as the first one did. And in fact, I don't even remember if I've ever even listened to their follow-up album, Aquarius, from 2000. They seem to just sort of try to emulate the same shtick that they did from Aquarium, and it just didn't really pan out that well. And then I think years later, in 2011, they came out with like another album, just trying to stay relevant, and it really didn't click. Yeah, Aqua is, the moment in the sun kind of old expression. Like, they had their heyday, their glory day in one portion of the 90s, and you know what? I'm about to bring everybody's attention. I'm just going to quickly go through track by track. The first track, Happy Boys and Happy Girls, it's a fine song. It's just not really, it's kind of repetitive when it comes to the lyrics, but then again, a lot of these songs are. My Oh My is the second one. It's catchy. It's like a typical Aqua song, but the music video is what really comes to mind. It's like a pirate themed, and it's very over the top and cheeky. Then, of course, there's Barbie Girl. I mean, it's an earworm of a song. I mean, whatever. I think actually Mattel tried to sue the band like years later, being like, hey, stop branding our doll toy in this song. Like, what? It's painting a bad image. It's kind of ridiculous. The next track was Good Morning Sunshine. It's not bad. It's kind of like a nice summer tune. Like, if you throw it on the radio, it's not... I think what it is that when Lena tries to sing, it's like have like a lot of like electronic kind of like high pitch retuning to her voice. That's what can get annoying. When she just naturally sings, she sounds good. And Good Morning Sunshine is one for she has a lot of range in it. Renee's kind of rapping part in the middle of it fits really well. It's not just like simple grade school just observations like, I am the candy man, and shit like that. The next track, of course, is the other hit, Dr. Jones. I mean, if you're an Indiana Jones fan, you should probably listen to this one. They just churn the whole archaeologist like pop culture legend into sort of like a love song, and the music video is another cheeky over the top thing. Heat of the Night, it's like a good beach song. It has like a kind of an Enrique Iglesias kind of undertone to it. You have to listen to it to know what I mean by that. Be a Man, not a bad song. Kind of hit or miss, but it is what it is. It's the less annoying one. Then, of course, Lollipop Candyman. This is the Outer Space one. No other music video that's just so crazy. I think there's like these are the 4 music videos that I remember just being so over the top and crazy. My Oh My, Barbie Girl, Dr. Jones, and Lollipop Candyman. Now these next 2 tracks, I personally want to give an introduction and recommend everybody to listen to these 2, because these 2 tracks hit And these are my two favorite tracks from Aqua. And they're both Roses Are Red and Churn Back Time. Roses Are Red just has a very nice, solid Euro dance kind of beat to it. It flows really nicely. It's my personal favorite dance song out of their songs. But Churn Back Time, the next track, it's a pop song, but it's a lot more slower. I love the flow of it, where it has a nice sort of showcase of Renee's voice in it. Or not Renee, sorry, Lena. Renee is actually not even singing in this. It's all Lena. She has a very beautiful voice in this song. And there's something kind of like underplayed and sort of like, I don't know, there's a good vibe to this. And also the music video is really something that's burned into my memory of just it being like an overexposed kind of like fast-paced out-of-body experience in the subway of the UK kind of music video, and it's really well done, actually. I recommend people looking that one up. Roses Are Red and Churn Back Time. If you listen to those tracks, you'd be like, wow, okay, this band is a little bit more than Barbie Girl. And then the last track is Calling You, and I don't remember that track. So, anyways, I mean, Aqua's Aquarium, my very first album, and I just love to sort of bring a little bit of attention to it because, yeah, it's definitely the seed to my music love, and I'm not ashamed of saying that. At this point, I don't even know if I would call it a guilty pleasure. It's just sort of almost too nostalgic for me at this point. I revisit it maybe like every 5 years, and maybe I'll throw on a song here and there if I'm at a get together or whatever, just as like a, hey, do you guys remember this song? Like, you know, and some people will recognize it, and it's pretty fun. So yeah, that is Aqua. And one other quick thing I'll say is that I recommend everybody looking up a lot of their remixes and instrumentals from Aqua's Aquarium, because again, there's some songs in there that are kind of nice, and they're just like some background kind of party music, and I think it fits pretty well. Some of it kind of holds up, but I don't want to be the judge of that. I want everybody else to listen to them, so I can't think of any other way of ending this off other than saying, come on, Barbie, let's go party.
I fucking hate sitcoms. I hate them for the same reason that quite a few people do. I mean, I'm not going to break the mold and say different things about them, but I think this topic came up when my girlfriend and I were watching Friends. We watched like the first season, and the entire time I was watching it, I was just saying, I really hope this gets better, because as it stands, it's incredibly limp, and I just want it to end. Every episode, I just want it to end. And I finished the second season, and I felt a little bit more, my reception was a little warmer towards it, but I still don't think it's anywhere near my favorite show. And it just got me thinking, it's like, I find a lot of sitcoms have the same problems. I find the first seasons of most sitcoms to be unbearable. It's like they haven't nailed the formula yet. They're kind of starting out, and it's a very awkward time. Even the first season of The Office, I think, is unwatchable. It took me until like the halfway point of season 2 to actually start caring about the characters. And it got to the point where I started thinking, are there any sitcoms I do like? And I think the only ones I can really think of that I can give like some high esteem towards would be like Taxi, which I actually really enjoyed when I was younger. My mom introduced me to that show. That show has a fantastic cast. You got like Judd Hirsch, Tony Danza, Christopher Lloyd later on, and Danny DeVito. And then, of course, Andy Kaufman. That show was his bread and butter. I like that show a lot. That was an interesting setup. I haven't seen too many other shows that try to replicate it, actually, so that's neat. And then you also have Third Rock from the Sun, which I actually like a lot. I think that's probably my favorite sitcom because it's such an absurd premise, but they play it perfectly, and every actor is just so good in it. The reactions are just so genuine. And yeah, I did like The Office. I watched the first season. I took like a year-long break from it because I didn't like it, and then I started petering away. I was on a date with someone that I met on OkCupid. We watched a few episodes, and after I stopped, I was like, ah. And then another half a year later, I just continued where I started, and I think it wasn't until like the Love Yacht, I think that was the name of the episode. That's when I actually clicked. It finally clicked with me, and I was like, okay, I want to see Jim get the girl. I guess that kind of leads into some of the tropes I dislike about sitcoms. The on and off relationship thing, or the will they won't they thing, it's very frustrating to me because it's just in almost every sitcom. It's always like, oh, the first season he really likes her, but she doesn't like him, and then oh, now she likes him, but he's found someone else, and oh, she has a boyfriend, and we're not supposed to like the boyfriend, even though it's really no one's business. And it's just like, oh my god, just get it over with. It's so frustrating. I will say this, at least in The Office, when Jim and Pam finally get together, and spoiler alert or whatever, it sticks. It's not like in Friends when Ross and Rachel finally get together. Oh, Ross does something dumb. Well, they're not going to get together. Oh, half a season later they get together. It's like, oh my god. How does someone like Jennifer Aniston get with a guy like David Schwimmer? You know, it's so weird. I don't know. And why is it that David Schwimmer can only have sex in her apartment, the apartment that she shares with his own damn sister? It's like, how weird is that? He lives alone. Just have Rachel go over there and then they can bonk. I don't know. Why do they do that? That's so fucking weird. Oh, jeez. Okay, so, yeah, I don't like the love. Oh, God. I gotta talk about laugh tracks. I hate laugh tracks. It's like, here, doggy, bark, have a treat. You know, it's like they're feeding us they're feeding us information to make us subliminally enjoy the show, but I'm just like, no. Because every joke is usually not worthy of a laugh track. It's like maybe a scoffle or something. Like, I'll be like, yeah. But then the audience in the background is like, and I'm like, and that goes on at least every 5 seconds. Or every 10 seconds, there's always a laugh track. It's obnoxious. Thank God that sitcoms are starting to use that less, because I find it to be like the worst aspect of the entire program. Ugh. And another thing with most sitcoms is like I find them predictable and very, very like tame for the most part. Like, I don't find them very like dangerous or like very like, you know, transgressive. They always have like this padding to them that just makes it so frustrating. Where it's like I can tell a joke from a mile away. It won't usually surprise me. And then every episode I know that they're going to return to the status quo. Everything's going to remain. Now, that's not to say that sitcoms don't have progression. Most of them do after like years and years and years. And oh god, okay. This is the biggest turnoff with me with pretty much any show, really, but sitcoms especially. Most sitcoms are incredibly long. I'm not talking about the runtime. I'm talking about the length of episodes per season and the amount of seasons per capita. Like, I'm watching Friends. I just finished season 2, and I have another eight goddamn seasons to go. And every season is like, well, think about it. It's like, typically there's like 23 to 26 episodes per season. And every episode's like usually 21 minutes, predominantly. So that's like 9 straight hours of television. And I don't want to watch 9 straight hours of a television show when most seasons only have like so many good episodes and the rest is usually filler or, you know, subpar. So it's frustrating. I remember Cody was telling me this story where he had like this bundle of episodes of Friends, like the classic episodes, the ones everyone always remembers. The one they remember. But it's just like, then what kind of a show is that? Like, I'm not getting all the information. I'm skipping a lot of the junk, but I'm just getting like little bits and pieces, like little parts of the program. I don't know. I feel like I would be disconnected or something. I don't know. I just don't like Friends. I can understand why people like the show because it's like, you know, it's kind of like, oh, hey, I know someone like that. Or, oh, hey, these guys. I feel like this warm connection with them all. I feel like it feels like I'm being wrapped with a nice warm blanket. And that's good for you. But I don't know. I just get so sick of it. I can't invest in a show where I have to sit through 10 entire seasons. It must be nice for the actors, though, because they get paid lots of money. Like, lots and lots of residuals and all that for being on a sitcom, especially a popular one. Oh my god, the syndication rights alone are insane, man. They get paid $1 million per episode. Oh, wow. No wonder, like, I understand the hustle. I understand the gravy train. I understand why people like sitcoms, but personally, I cannot stand them the slightest. I'd much rather watch a mini-series or something concise, because I have too much to do as it is, so I can't just sit and watch a show and from beginning to end. And I guess the idea is like, oh, if it's on, you just watch the episode. No one's forcing you to binge watch a sitcom. But in this day of streaming or like home media, yeah, I have no excuse but to not watch it from beginning to end. And I think that's where the problem lies. And to think about it, like when you think of animated sitcoms, I prefer most of those because they're usually a lot more interesting. They have this fantastical ability to kind of stretch the laws of reality to their whim. And even though most animated sitcoms have way too many pop culture references to count, I don't know, it's just I think it's like the problem I have with a modern sitcom where it's like, oh, it's 10 seasons. That's even worse for most animated sitcoms because they can last 20 to 30 seasons, and the drop in quality is so blatantly apparent after a while because you can tell the original people who worked on the show have moved on to other things, and the people who replaced them weren't there from the beginning, so it's kind of like this vast disconnect. And then, like, the actors' voices get older, it gets more and more apparent that maybe you should have pulled the plug earlier, but you didn't, so now we're stuck. It's like, why is The Simpsons still going on? Like, they have enough money? Like, geez. And then, I don't know, that's not to say, like, I think all sitcoms are stupid. I haven't watched a lot of it, but I think Seinfeld's a pretty clever sitcom that kind of does a pretty good job of, like, poking fun at its own, like, format. Same with something like Community, which does a really good job of, like, opening the doors for a lot of possibilities in terms of parody and, like, self-reflection. And even something like Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I kind of enjoyed for a little while, it was definitely a show that was incredibly well written for the fact that it's written by a single guy, Larry David. That's just his show, and he can do whatever he wants. For 9 seasons, it's taken him 17 years to get through 9 seasons of his own show, and I just find that so... that's just Larry, you know. But, I gotta wrap up my thoughts. I know my girlfriend really likes sitcoms, and I really hope she doesn't listen to this episode. It's just, yeah, I find most sitcoms really arduous to sit through. Most of them are, like, only, like, invariably funny, and then eventually the show really drops in quality. Like, oh my god, The Office. As soon as Steve Carell left, the show was just, it never found its footing again. It was so clumsy after that. And that's the thing, like, it's really hard to watch a sitcom die, especially when it reached, like, the highest heights of their popularity. And to watch it slowly crumble rather than just end on a solid note is, like, really, really painful to sit through. So yeah, I guess sitcoms are just not my thing. I'm sorry. Don't kill me. Comment down below. What are some of your favorite sitcoms? And I'll see if I agree with you or not. Not that it matters, but, yeah. I guess I gotta end this with a joke. Who wants egg salad?
COVID-19 conspiracy theories. In March of 2020, the World Health Organization, or as some of these nutjobs like to childishly refer to it as, the World Health Organization, they declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. And then, for weeks afterward, it was, we need to close every non-essential business. We need to stay in their homes. This was the response to COVID-19 being declared a global pandemic was so diverse and so varied from country to country, from continent to continent, that it was very clear from very early on in this ordeal that there was no global coordination plan to tackle this virus. And the way that this virus has spread over the last 2 years until we've been able to come up with a vaccine for it is quite apparent that there was no coordination for how to deal with a threat like this. Nevertheless, there have been no shortage of conspiracy theories around what this virus is to us and what this virus means to society, or at least the way the world's governments are responding to it. So the first conspiracy theory I'd like to address is that COVID-19 is completely fake and that it's all a lie perpetrated by Big Pharma to get people to take vaccines or to get people to live in fear. It's perpetrated by this big satanic cabal of some sort to basically get people to live in fear. The idea that a fake virus could be spread is insane, especially when you look at the fact that humanity has gone through pandemics for centuries in our existence. And every single pandemic that we have ever endured as a species in recorded history has passed. One of the longest pandemics we ever had lasted almost a decade, the Black Death, and that took out most of what was the population of the known world at the time, or at least a good portion of it. I don't have the exact statistics in front of me at this time, but you get the idea. 100 years ago, the world was fighting the Spanish influenza pandemic. That ended right when the Spanish influenza pandemic started at the tail end of World War I and lasted for 2 years, roughly about the same time as the COVID-19 pandemic is currently about to last. We're still in the COVID-19 pandemic. So the idea that, world governments all under the influence of some satanic evil hidden force would just make up a virus is stupid to me. There is no way, and I will repeat this, this applies to every conspiracy theory I'm going to talk about here tonight, but if it was fake, there is no way they could keep a lie like that unspoiled and unrevealed for as long as they have. It's just not logistically possible. The other conspiracy theory I like to hear is that COVID-19 is a real virus and it's just a non-issue. It's just another flu that is being overhyped to scare people. Now, we've been fighting this virus as a collective population on this planet for almost 2 years, and there have been some half-decent arguments about, how deadly this thing actually is, which are worth listening to. But to say across the board that if you get COVID-19, you're just 99.9% likely to recover from it. What that statistic fails to mention is that, yes, while the mortality rate of COVID-19, it appears to be very low, and it has not killed nearly as many people as something like, say, Spanish influenza did 100 years ago. Not yet, at least. it is worth mentioning that even if you do believe that you're 99.9% likely to recover from COVID-19, this is the reality. You have no way of, if you were to contract and get infected with COVID-19, you have no way of knowing what the virus will do to your body. There have been some horror stories of people who have permanently lost their sense of taste. Their sense of smell is completely screwed up. Young people, like people in their 20s who got COVID and have supposedly gotten over the initial illness, are still seeing, symptoms of the virus to this day, like long-term symptoms, like they get brain fog, like they have difficulty breathing. People who have survived COVID have permanent lung damage. Now, does this apply to everyone who gets COVID? No, it doesn't. There are a fortunate few who have gotten COVID and it was like getting a cold. So the reality is, yes, if you get COVID, it might pass through your body like a common cold, but on the other hand, it might not. And not only that, you could spread the virus to someone who is immune compromised or someone whose health isn't that great. And those are the demographics that this virus is likely to kill. Now, healthy people have gotten COVID and their lives have been completely rearranged. Their bodies are not what they were. So the point is, you don't want to fuck around with this virus. And I do, unfortunately, have people within my network who are around my age and have dealt with this virus, and it gave them a run for their money. I knew one person who gets over typical flus within a day or two. COVID made them sick for 2 weeks. So I'm sorry to go off on this tangent, but it's a non-issue virus. It's a stupid claim is all I'm saying. It's not a non-issue. You need to take this seriously, even though the majority of the population on planet Earth, even like it took until like roughly the summer, but it was announced that we have half the population of planet Earth vaccinated against COVID-19 successfully. So, as long as cases continue to fall in some parts of the world, and as long as this virus doesn't continue to evolve, yes, we can beat this virus. I am positive that we can. The problem is we have all these conspiracy theories to fight. Now, another conspiracy theory I'd like to address is this whole virus exists to to control a population. This is a stupid conspiracy theory to me because let's take Western civilization. If you want to control a population, you don't need a fucking virus to control a population. What you need are societal trends and patterns of behavior. And, stigmatization. Kind of like the society we have now. Like the way our unregulated capitalist society is set up. Like, if you want to survive, you have to work a job. You don't work a job, you don't get paid, you can't live. So how is that not a system of control? The fact that you need to work like a minimum wage job just to barely get by, how is that not a system of control? The fact that we don't have, basic income for those who need it, and the fact that the living wage in Western civilization, Canada, and the U.S. is barely affordable. How is that not a system of control? So the idea that that they would bring about a virus makes no sense to me to control a population. There are plenty of elements in our society that I would argue already control us. Now, that's a valid conversation to have, and I feel like we should distract I feel like we should, focus on that rather than focusing on a virus that rather than accusing, the social distancing and the vaccine regulations as a measure of control. The idea that, there's a microchip in the vaccine. Give me a break. If there is this evil force controlling everything, they don't need to inject a microchip into your body to control you. You know how they control you with a microchip? With the microchip in your fucking phone. Like, this is so obvious. Why do you think that the government needs to put a chip in your body to get information from you? What possible extra information could the government or whoever the evil force is, what possible information could they get from you by sticking a microchip into your body a la vaccine against a global pandemic? So, lastly, the whole vaccine regulations, we're seeing a lot of instances, specifically in the province of Canada in which I live, where coffee shops and tourist attractions and public places, a lot of these places will not let you in unless you have proof that you have been at least 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. This, there is like a reasonable conversation to have about, what crackdown measures and what safety measures are too extreme. But the reality is, if we control a virus, if we want to control a virus, then we have got to, we've got to act. And it's not like, we've never seen stuff like this before. Like during Spanish influenza, they made people wear masks in public, and people did wear masks in public. Granted, there was a movement that was against masks, just like there is today. There was no internet 100 years ago, but there was still, the hysteria and paranoia of, mass control amongst any given population. But if this makes any of the conspiracy theorists feel any better, that pandemic ended. And you know what? All these crazy regulations that needed to be enacted for public health reasons, they went away when the virus was no longer a threat. And when COVID-19 is no longer a threat, we will see all our safety regulations go away. However long that takes is a whole other question, and I would like to see a world where that is like, very similar to what we lost, but I would also like to see our world get better, because the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed a lot of flaws in our system. One of these is, hey, that job that you thought you could do from home remotely, but the office made you come in despite the fact that you may have a chronic disability or a chronic illness. Yeah, you can do that job from home too. We can cut CO2 emissions. We can make a better world. We can have a cleaner world. There are tons of things that we can do to affect a change in a better society going forward. And no, that's not a conspiracy theory. That's, stuff that we can learn. Another thing that I think is important for us to learn from is, in order for us to be ready against future pandemics, which, by the way, we're still not, there's no big coordinated plan for the next pandemic after COVID-19. If we don't learn from the mistakes we've made in this pandemic, and believe me, we've made a lot of them, then the next pandemic and the next virus that threatens our world, which might be even deadlier because viruses are constantly evolving, we may not be ready for it, and history is just going to repeat itself all over again. Sorry for that little bit of cynicism, but I want to get back to a hopeful note. So, people have personally told me that the vaccines are dangerous, that people have died from the side effects. While yes, there have been some very tragic instances where people have been chronically impaired or died of illness from a vaccine side effect, I look at it as like taking a plane to go somewhere when, yes, there is a risk of a plane crash. The unfortunate reality of the situation is that we still fly on planes to go to places. Like, you don't see an anti-air travel movement, or hell, you're also train crashes are a very real thing too. You don't see an anti-rail travel movement because trains are unsafe. We as a society have vaccines, and in large part they do good. Now, it's like to me it's just like this. We have vaccines because they are mostly safe. The odds of you getting chronically impaired or even dying from vaccine side effects is low. I would probably say lower than your odds of dying in a plane crash. So I would just apply the same logic to that. It's like, why don't we yeah. So anyways, that's my little rant about these vaccine regulations and these. So yeah, let's start again. So yeah, that's my little rant about COVID restrictions and vaccine mandates and just the overall conspiracy stuff. Oh, one last thing I would like to mention is this. I cannot understand, at risk of going into a political discussion, I cannot understand why someone like Donald Trump is the big, good guy. That's actually what these conspiracy people call him. The good guy that's going to expose this whole virus as a lie, who's going to conduct mass arrests of all these, cabal agents who, perpetrated the pandemic and acted like the pandemic was real. Donald Trump is an authoritarian lunatic who doesn't give a shit about democracy. And I've heard the argument from, people who follow QAnon that, he's taking down an underground, ring of pedophiles who are infiltrating the deep depths of our society. While it is a very, very, very important issue to talk about, human trafficking within the depths of our society, I think we should have that conversation. However, there is no way in fucking hell that Donald Trump is the solution and the magical savior of this problem. And that's all I'm going to get into without getting into an anti-Trump rant, because I'm just tired of talking about this guy. And where was I going with this? Yeah. Lastly, I would like to just say this. If there was a mass conspiracy theory, it would be impossible to hide. I mean, if you look at the way that the global response to COVID-19 was so discoordinated and so varied from country to country, city to city, region to region, how can there be a conspiracy, a global conspiracy with this virus if the response was so varied? Like, how can we be controlling everything and everyone in the world if every country handled this differently? I feel like it's, a very American thing to assume that, the virus only affects your country and your government officials are enacting all these regulations in order to control you. You're just going to disregard everything else that's happening in the world? Give me a break. And I will say this, though. Before COVID-19 was declared a global pandemic, it was a major health concern in Wuhan, China. the window we had as a global community to control this virus back in early 2020 was so small. There was a window of opportunity we had to contain this virus and stop it from spreading absolutely everywhere, and we could have prevented a global pandemic. That plan either didn't exist or was not executed properly, and a global pandemic did happen. And we've been living in this world with a global pandemic for the last almost 2 years. So we need a better plan to deal with future threats like this. And I apologize if this is preachier than the usual stuff I talk about on this show, but there is no conspiracy. I think we are fooling ourselves by thinking that this virus is just an evil plot to control people. It distracts from real issues of real control and real issues of real problems that we could be talking about, like flawed healthcare systems, child trafficking. Like, these are all real problems, and the conspiracy nuts are hijacking all of them to act like it's, COVID is, the big thing that is controlling all of these evil things in our world. Let's tackle one problem at a time. Let's discuss all these problems intelligently, and let's just not assume that there's all an evil plan. Thank you, and have a good night.